9,000 feet above the North Sea, March 23, 1943. 22:14 hours, Greenwich Mean Time. Flight Lieutenant Charles Brennan is piloting Avro Lancaster serial number W4783, call sign Baker Baker, when a piece of flak the size of a man's fist punches through the navigator's compartment. The fragment enters at a shallow angle, passes through the navigation table, and exits through the fuselage skin on the opposite side. The navigator, Pilot Officer Malcolm Reed, is leaning over the table when the fragment passes through the space his chest occupied 3 seconds earlier. He is not hit, but the navigation table is destroyed. The maps are shredded. The sextant is in pieces. The drift sight is inoperable. Reed looks at the wreckage and then at Brennan and says over the intercom, "Skipper, I have nothing to work with." The Lancaster is 117 miles northwest of the target, the U-boat pens at Saint-Nazaire. The bomb load has been delivered. The aircraft is configured for the return flight. Course to base is 042 degrees magnetic. Distance, 463 miles. Fuel remaining, 2 hours 54 minutes at current consumption. Weather, scattered cloud at 6,000 feet, visibility 8 miles, winds from the southwest at 32 knots. The crew consists of 7 men. 6 of them can still perform their jobs. The 7th, the navigator, cannot. This is not a story about improvisation. This is a story about what happens when one critical system in a bomber fails and the remaining systems must compensate. Navigation in a 4-engine heavy bomber over blacked-out Europe at night is not optional. It is the difference between reaching England and flying into the sea. Without a navigator, the pilot must navigate. Without navigation tools, the pilot must use dead reckoning, radio bearings, and astronomy. These methods are less accurate than a navigator with proper equipment, but less accurate is better than nothing. The strategic picture in March of 1943 is one of attrition and escalation. RAF Bomber Command is conducting the Battle of the Ruhr, a sustained campaign against industrial targets in western Germany. The campaign began on March 5th with a raid on Essen. It will continue through July, with major raids every few nights against cities and factories that supply the German war machine. The objective is not precision. The objective is destruction. Bomber Command does not have the navigational accuracy to hit individual buildings from 20,000 feet at night. It has the capacity to destroy entire districts. The Ruhr contains many districts worth destroying. Saint-Nazaire is not in the Ruhr. It is on the Atlantic coast of occupied France, 400 miles southwest of the main bombing effort. But it is strategically important for a different reason. The port contains concrete U-boat pens, massive reinforced structures that protect German submarines during refitting and resupply. The pens are nearly invulnerable to conventional bombing. The concrete roofs are 14 feet thick. A standard 1,000-pound general-purpose bomb will not penetrate them. Bomber Command uses specialized weapons for this target, 4,000-pound cookies, blast bombs, designed to destroy everything around the pens, even if they cannot destroy the pens themselves. The theory is that if the infrastructure around the pens is demolished, cranes, workshops, fuel depots, the pens become useless. The theory is partially correct. The raid on Saint-Nazaire on the night of March 23rd involves 367 aircraft, 213 Lancasters, 97 Halifaxes, 40 Wellingtons, and 17 Sterlings. This is a maximum effort. Every available bomber in the command's operational squadrons is committed. The force takes off from bases across eastern England between 2000 and 21:30 hours. The route takes them south across the Channel, inland over Brittany, and then southwest to the target. The return route is nearly reciprocal, northeast over Brittany, north across the Channel, landfall at Portland or Plymouth. Total mission time, approximately 6 hours. The weather forecast is favorable, clear skies over the target, scattered cloud over the Channel. Flight Lieutenant Brennan's crew is assigned to 467 Squadron, based at RAF Bottisbrook in Leicestershire. The squadron is part of 5 Group, one of Bomber Command's most experienced formations. Brennan has flown 19 operational sorties since joining the squadron in November of 1942. His crew has flown together for 14 of those sorties. This continuity matters. Bomber crews are not interchangeable. A pilot who knows his crew's habits and reactions is more effective than a pilot flying with strangers. The same applies to every position. A bomb aimer who knows his pilot's approach technique, a wireless operator who knows his navigator's preferences, an engineer who knows which engines tend to run hot. These small efficiencies accumulate into survival. Brennan is 24 years old. He joined the RAF in January of 1941, motivated less by patriotism than by the practical calculation that volunteers could choose their branch of service. He wanted to fly. The RAF sent him to Initial Training Wing, then Elementary Flying Training School, then Service Flying Training School. He trained on Tiger Moths, then Airspeed Oxfords, then twin-engine Wellingtons. He was assessed as steady, methodical, and reliable. These are not glamorous qualities, but they are the qualities Bomber Command needs. A steady pilot keeps formation. A methodical pilot completes checklists. A reliable pilot brings his crew home. He was posted to 467 Squadron in November of 1942 and assigned to a crew. His navigator, Pilot Officer Malcolm Reed, is 23 years old and a former mathematics teacher from Edinburgh. Reed joined the RAF in March of 1942 and completed navigation training at Air Observer School in Canada. He is precise, thorough, and rarely makes errors. His navigation logs are models of clarity. He calculates wind drift to 1 degree of accuracy. He cross-checks his position, fixes against multiple sources. He does not cut corners. This attention to detail has kept Brennan's aircraft on course through 19 previous missions. Tonight, it will be unavailable. The mission briefing at Botesbrook begins at 1700 hours. The crews are told the target is Saint-Nazaire. The route is displayed on a large map. South to Reading, across the channel at Selsey Bill, landfall on the French coast at Point de Barfleur, then southwest across Brittany to the target. The turning point after the bomb run is over the village of Guérande, 15 miles northeast of Saint-Nazaire. From there, the route is northeast to the Brittany coast, then north across the channel to landfall at Portland. The distance from base to target is 481 miles. The return distance is 463 miles. Total, 944 miles. Flight time, approximately 6 hours. The Met officer briefs the weather. Clear over the target, some cloud over the channel, winds from the southwest at 25 to 30 knots. The intelligence officer briefs the defenses, heavy flak over the target, approximately 60 heavy guns and 120 light guns. The predicted altitude of the flak barrage is between 8,000 and 12,000 feet. The recommended bombing altitude is 9,000 feet. This is low for a Lancaster, but the target requires accuracy. The concrete pens will not be damaged by bombs that miss by half a mile. Brennan's crew walks to their aircraft at 1945 hours. W-4783 is parked on the dispersal hard stand, fueled and bombed. The bomb load is one 4,000-pound cookie and 12 500-pound general-purpose bombs. Total weight, 10,000 pounds. The fuel load is 2,154 gallons, enough for 7 hours of flight at normal cruise settings. The crew performs the external checks, control surfaces free and correct, tires inflated, fuel cap secure, bomb doors closed. The ground crew has already completed the pre-flight inspection, but the air crew checks again. Redundancy prevents accidents. They board through the rear entrance hatch and move to their stations. Brennan and the flight engineer, Sergeant Arthur Moss, settle into the cockpit. Reed moves forward to the navigator's compartment, a cramped space just aft of the nose. The bomb aimer, Flying Officer David Hughes, positions himself in the nose, lying prone on the padded rest above the bomb site. The wireless operator, Sergeant Raymond Clark, sits at his station amidships, surrounded by radio equipment. The two gunners, mid-upper and rear, climb into their turrets and test traverse their weapons. The intercom crackles as each crew member reports ready. Brennan starts the engines at 2030 hours. The four Rolls-Royce Merlin engines cough, fire, and settle into a synchronized roar. He runs through the checks: oil pressure, coolant temperature, magnetos, propeller pitch. All readings are normal. The tower clears him for taxi at 2038. He releases the brakes and the Lancaster rolls forward, joining the queue of bombers moving toward the runway. The wait is 12 minutes. At 2050, the green light flashes from the caravan beside the runway. Brennan advances the throttles. The Lancaster accelerates. The tail lifts. At 90 miles per hour, the wheels leave the ground. The climb to operational altitude takes 21 minutes. Brennan levels off at 9,000 feet and sets cruise power, 2,000 RPM, plus 4 boost. The airspeed stabilizes at 185 miles per hour. Fuel consumption at this setting is 306 gallons per hour. The Lancaster joins the bomber stream, a loose formation of aircraft converging on the same route at roughly the same altitude. There is no tight formation flying at night. Each aircraft navigates independently, maintaining altitude and heading to avoid collision. The stream is 15 miles wide and stretches for 70 miles from the first aircraft to the last. Reed is at his station, hunched over the navigation table with his charts and instruments. The table is equipped with a lamp, a drift sight, a sextant, and a compass. The drift sight allows him to measure the aircraft's lateral movement relative to the ground, which reveals the wind's effect. The sextant allows him to measure the altitude of celestial bodies, which provides a position fix. The compass provides heading. By combining these measurements with airspeed and time, Reed calculates the aircraft's position every 6 minutes. He marks each fix on the chart with a pencil. The line connecting these fixes is the track. If the track deviates from the planned route, Reed provides Brennan with a course correction. At 21:47 hours, the Lancaster crosses the English coast at Selsey Bill. The navigator reports, "Crossing the coast now, skipper. On track. On time." Brennan acknowledges. The next waypoint is the French coast at Point de Barfleur, 93 miles ahead. The estimated time to the waypoint is 31 minutes. Reed will provide an update when they reach it. At 22:14 hours, the flak begins. The first bursts appear at 9 o'clock, black puffs against the darker sky. The German gunners are firing predicted barrages, filling the air ahead of the bomber stream with shrapnel. Brennan does not take evasive action. Evasive maneuvers waste fuel and disrupt the bomb run. The standing order is to fly straight and level through the flak unless a burst occurs within 100 feet. Brennan counts the bursts. 6, 8, 12. None are close. Then one is close. The burst occurs 50 feet below and slightly aft. The Lancaster shudders. Brennan hears metal striking metal. The aircraft yaws slightly to the right. He corrects with rudder. The yaw persists. Moss, the flight engineer, scans the instrument panel. Hydraulic pressure dropping on the starboard side, he reports. Looks like a leak. Brennan checks the gauges. The hydraulic pressure on the starboard system is falling. If it drops to 0, the starboard landing gear and flaps will not extend. This is a problem for later. Right now, the immediate concern is whether the aircraft is flyable. He tests the controls. The yoke responds normally. The rudder pedals are slightly stiff but functional. The engines are running smoothly. The aircraft is damaged but controllable. Reed's voice comes over the intercom. His tone is flat. "Skipper, I have nothing to work with." Brennan keys his microphone. "Say again?" Flak fragment came through the navigation compartment. "Destroyed the table. Maps are gone. Instruments are gone. I can't navigate." Brennan processes this information. The mission is not complete. They are still 117 miles from the target. They must reach the target, drop the bombs, and return to base. Without a navigator, this becomes significantly more difficult. But it is not impossible. Brennan has been trained in basic navigation. Every pilot has. The training is not as thorough as a navigator's, but it covers the fundamentals: dead reckoning, radio bearings, astronavigation. He will have to use all of them. He says, Understood. I'll navigate from here. Reed, move to the rest position and stay out of the way. Hughes, you're going to help with the navigation when we're not over the target. Clark, I'll need radial bearings every 10 minutes. Everyone else, keep your eyes open for landmarks. The acknowledgements come back one by one. The crew understands the situation. They do not discuss it further. There is no value in discussing problems that cannot be solved. The only value is in executing solutions. Brennan looks at the compass. The heading is 215 degrees magnetic. This should take them toward the target. He does not have a map, but he has memorized the route during the briefing. From the current position, approximately over the Brittany coast, the target is 117 miles to the southwest. The heading is approximately 220 degrees. He adjusts course 5 degrees left. The new heading is 220. He calls Clark, the wireless operator. Clark, I need a radial bearing on base. Transmit for 30 seconds. Clark acknowledges and switches his transmitter to the homing frequency. He holds the key down for 30 seconds. Brennan waits. After 2 minutes, Clark reports, "No response, Skipper. Too far from base for a bearing." This is expected. The radio direction finding stations in England have a range of approximately 300 miles. They are currently 380 miles from base, but there are other stations. Clark tries the French resistance stations, which operate clandestinely and provide bearings to Allied aircraft. No response. Clark tries the emergency frequency. Still no response. Brennan accepts this. Radio bearings are unavailable. He will navigate by dead reckoning and by observing the ground. Dead reckoning is simple in principle. You know your starting position, your heading, your airspeed, and your time. You calculate how far you have traveled and in what direction. This gives you your current position. The problem is that dead reckoning does not account for wind. If the wind is from the side, it pushes the aircraft off course. If the wind is from ahead or behind, it changes the ground speed. Without knowing the wind, dead reckoning accumulates error. Brennan estimates the wind. The Met officer said southwest at 25 to 30 knots. If the wind is from the southwest and the aircraft is heading southwest, the wind is roughly on the nose. This will slow the ground speed. The airspeed is 185 miles per hour. The wind reduces this by approximately 20 miles per hour. Ground speed is therefore 165 miles per hour. Time to target at 165 miles per hour, 42 minutes from the coast. They crossed the coast at 21:47. They should reach the target at 22:29. At 22:23, Hughes, the bomb aimer, reports, "I can see fires ahead. Looks like the target." Brennan looks through the windscreen. He sees a glow on the horizon. The glow resolves into multiple fires as they close the distance. The first wave of bombers has already attacked. The target is burning. This is helpful. The fires provide a visual reference. Brennan does not need a map to know where the target is. He can see it. At 22:28, Hughes reports, "Target in sight. Bomb doors open." Brennan reaches for the bomb door lever and pulls it. He hears the hydraulic system activate and feels the aircraft slow slightly as the doors open and increase drag. The airspeed drops to 172 miles per hour. He compensates by advancing the throttle slightly. Hughes is calling the approach, left, left, steady, steady, bombs gone. The Lancaster lifts as 10,000 pounds of ordnance drops free. Brennan feels the aircraft rise and begins a climbing turn to the left. The turn is away from the target, toward the exit route. He climbs to 10,000 feet and levels off. The next waypoint is Guerande, 15 miles northeast of the target. From there, the route is northeast to the Brittany coast, then north across the channel. He does not have a map. He does not know the exact location of Guerande, but he knows the general direction, northeast. He sets a heading of 045 degrees and maintains it for 8 minutes. This should take him away from the target area and toward the channel. At 10,000 feet, visibility is better. He can see the coastline ahead, a dark line separating land from water. He adjusts heading to follow the coast northeast. At 2302, they cross the Brittany coast outbound. The heading is now 042 degrees, which should take them across the channel toward the English coast. The distance is approximately 120 miles. Time at current speed, 43 minutes. They should reach England at 23:45. Brennan calls Clark again. "Try for a radio bearing now. We're closer to base." Clark transmits. This time, a response comes back. The bearing is 047 degrees. This means they are slightly west of the direct course to base. Brennan adjusts heading 5 degrees right to 047. This is close enough. The flight across the channel is uneventful. The cloud layer below them thickens, but visibility above the cloud is clear. Brennan watches the stars. He does not have a sextant, but he knows enough about celestial navigation to orient himself. Polaris, the North Star, is visible to the right of the nose. This confirms they are heading northeast. The constellation Orion is visible to the south. This also confirms the heading. He is not lost. He is simply navigating without instruments. At 2341, the cloud layer breaks and he sees lights below. The lights are faint, shielded by blackout regulations, but they are visible. This is England. He does not know where in England, but it is England. He calls Clark. "Request a bearing to base." Clark transmits. The bearing comes back 033 degrees, distance approximately 80 miles. Brennan adjusts heading to 033. Time to base at current speed, 29 minutes. At 0006 hours, he sees the airfield. The runway lights are on, dim but visible. He calls the tower and requests permission to land. The tower responds, "Baker, Baker, you are cleared to land. Winds 270 at 12. Proceed." Brennan begins the descent. The hydraulic pressure on the starboard system is now at 15%. He does not know if the landing gear will extend fully. He calls Moss. "Check the gear status when I lower it. Let me know if we have 3 green." He pulls the gear lever. He hears the hydraulic system strain. The gear extends slowly. Moss watches the indicator lights. 2 green, skipper. Starboard main is red. Brennan considers this. A landing with one main gear retracted is survivable but difficult. The aircraft will veer toward the collapsed gear as soon as it touches down. He will have full rudder and brake on the opposite side to keep it straight. The runway at Bodasbrook is long enough. He transmits to the tower. "Baker, Baker, starboard main gear is indicating unsafe. Request foam on the runway." The tower acknowledges. Brennan continues the approach. At 500 feet, he lowers the flaps. The starboard flap extends partially but not fully. The aircraft yaws slightly to the right. He corrects with rudder and aileron. The approach is unstable but controllable. At 200 feet, Moss reports, "Starboard gear just locked, 3 green." Brennan glances at the indicator panel. 3 green lights. The gear is down and locked. The hydraulic system, despite the leak, has done its job. He continues the approach. The main wheels touch at 0013 hours. The landing is firm but not hard. He brakes evenly and the Lancaster decelerates. At 40 miles per hour, he turns off the runway and taxis to the dispersal. He shuts down the engines at 0018 hours. The silence is sudden and complete. The crew sits for a moment, adjusting to the absence of noise. Then they unbuckle and climb out of the aircraft. The ground crew is already there, examining the damage. The hydraulic line is severed. The flak fragment is embedded in the fuselage. The navigation compartment is destroyed. Reed walks over to Brennan and looks at the wreckage. He says, "How did you do it?" Brennan shrugs. "Dead reckoning. Radial bearings. Followed the coast. It's not complicated." Reed does not argue. It is not complicated in theory. In practice, it is the difference between landing at base and ditching in the channel. But Reed does not say this. He simply nods. The debriefing takes place in the operations room at 0100 hours. The intelligence officer asks standard questions: time over target, bombing results, enemy defenses, aircraft damage. Brennan answers factually. The target was on fire when they arrived. The bombs were dropped from 9,000 feet. Flak was heavy and accurate. The aircraft sustained damage to the hydraulic system and the navigation compartment. The navigator was unable to navigate. The pilot navigated using dead reckoning and radio bearings. The intelligence officer writes this down and asks, "Did you consider returning early?" Brennan says, "No. The aircraft was flyable. We completed the mission." The intelligence officer nods and closes his notebook. The debriefing is over. Brennan and his crew walk to the mess for the post-mission meal. The tradition is bacon and eggs, a luxury meal that no one eats at any other time. They eat in silence. The wireless operator, Clark, eventually says, "That was closer than I'd like." Brennan does not respond. Close is a relative term. They completed the mission and returned to base. By that standard, it was not close at all. W4783 is repaired over the next 4 days. The hydraulic line is replaced. The navigation compartment is rebuilt. The flak fragment is removed and kept as a souvenir by one of the ground crew. The aircraft returns to operational status and flies 19 more missions before being lost over Berlin in August of 1943. The crew bails out. 4 survive. Reed continues as Brennan's navigator for another 11 missions. In June, he is promoted to flying officer and posted to a Pathfinder squadron. He survives the war and returns to teaching. He does not speak about the mission to St. Nazaire except to say that it was unusual. When pressed for details, he says that the pilot navigated after the equipment was destroyed. He does not elaborate. Brennan completes his tour in September of 1943 after 30 missions. He is awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross. The citation mentions his skill in completing a mission after the loss of navigation equipment. It does not mention that he navigated by dead reckoning and radio bearings for 463 miles over occupied Europe and the North Sea at night. These details are considered routine. The tactical impact of this incident is narrow. 1 mission completed despite equipment failure. 1 aircraft returned to service. 1 crew retained for future operations. Bomber Command does not publish statistics on missions completed without navigators because such statistics are not compiled. The assumption is that navigation equipment will function or the mission will be aborted. W4783's mission is an exception, and exceptions are not analyzed unless they reveal systemic problems. This exception reveals no systemic problems. It reveals only that a competent pilot with basic navigation training can compensate for the loss of a specialist, provided the weather is clear and radio bearings are available. The broader impact is procedural. After the war, RAF training doctrine is revised to include additional navigation instruction for pilots. The revision is subtle. Pilots are taught to calculate wind drift using visual references. They are taught to use radial bearings as primary navigation aids when charts are unavailable. They are taught to navigate by the stars using simplified methods that do not require a sextant. These skills are not intended to replace a trained navigator. They are intended to provide redundancy when the navigator cannot function. The doctrine is implemented in 1946 and remains in effect until the introduction of automated navigation systems in the 1960s. During this period, an estimated 17 RAF bombers complete missions after losing navigation equipment. The pilots navigate using the methods taught in the revised curriculum. None of these incidents result in loss of aircraft or crew. The number is small, but it is not zero. The doctrine works. Brennan leaves the RAF in 1946 and returns to civilian life. He works as a civil aviation pilot for British European Airways, flying Dakotas and later Viscounts. He retires in 1972. When asked about his wartime service, he describes it in factual terms. He flew 30 missions. He was shot at frequently. He was hit once. He completed the mission and returned to base. He does not describe the mission as exceptional. He describes it as what happened. He dies in 1998 at the age of 79. His obituary mentions his Distinguished Flying Cross and his service in Bomber Command. It does not mention the mission to Saint-Nazaire. By then, the details are archived in the operations record books at the National Archives, available to researchers who know where to look. Most researchers do not know where to look. The mission remains a footnote. The Saint-Nazaire U-boat pens still exist. They were never successfully destroyed by bombing. After the war, they were abandoned and later repurposed as industrial storage and, eventually, as a concert venue. The concrete is still there, 14 feet thick, exactly as it was in 1943. The pens are a monument to the limits of strategic bombing and to the durability of reinforced concrete. The route that Brennan flew south across the Channel, southwest over Brittany, northeast to the coast, north to England, is no longer used for military operations. It is used by commercial aircraft flying between London and southern Europe. The route is controlled by air traffic radar and automated navigation systems. Pilots do not navigate by dead reckoning. They do not calculate wind drift. They do not use radio bearings. The systems handle everything. But the sky is the same. The stars are in the same positions. The wind still blows from the southwest at 25 to 30 knots. The distance from southern England to the Brittany coast is still 120 miles. The mathematics have not changed, only the tools have changed. Brennan understood this. Navigation is not magic, it is measurement and calculation. If you know your speed, your heading, and your time, you can calculate your position. If you know your position and your destination, you can calculate your course. The tools make the calculations easier and more accurate, but the principles are unchanged. A navigator with a chart and a sextant is more accurate than a pilot with a compass and a watch. But a pilot with a compass and a watch is more accurate than a pilot with nothing. On the night of March 23, 1943, Brennan had a compass and a watch. He also had a crew that trusted him and a radio operator who could request bearings and an engineer who monitored the fuel. He used all of these resources methodically. He did not improvise. He applied procedures learned in training to a situation not covered by the procedures. This is not improvisation. This is adaptation. The distinction matters. Improvisation implies creativity, spontaneity, deviation from doctrine. Adaptation implies using doctrine flexibly when circumstances change. Brennan did not invent a new method of navigation. He used existing methods in an unusual context. The methods worked because they were sound. The context was unusual because the equipment failed. But equipment fails. This is a known variable. Training accounts for it. The lesson, if there is a lesson, is about redundancy. A bomber crew has 7 men. Each man has a job. If one man cannot do his job, the others must compensate. This compensation is possible only if the others have been trained broadly enough to understand what the specialist does. Brennan could navigate because he had been taught navigation. He was not as good as Reed, but he was good enough. Good enough is often sufficient. The mission required reaching the target, dropping the bombs, and returning to base. Brennan did all 3. The navigation was less precise than it would have been with Reed at the table. The course deviations were larger. The fuel margin was smaller, but the outcome was the same. The bombs fell on the target. The aircraft landed at base. The crew survived. Thousands of other crews did not survive. They were shot down over Germany or France. They crashed into the North Sea. They ran out of fuel over England and ditched in fields. Some of these losses were due to equipment failure. Some were due to pilot error. Some were due to enemy action. Some were due to weather or mechanical failure or simple bad luck. The causes varied. The outcome was the same. Brennan's crew survived because the equipment failure occurred at a point in the mission where compensation was possible. If the navigation table had been destroyed during the outbound leg before they reached the target, Brennan might not have found Saint-Nazaire. If it had been destroyed over the Channel during the return, he might not have found England. but it was destroyed after they crossed the French coast outbound. By that point, the target was visible and the route home was straightforward. The timing was fortunate. Luck is not a strategy, but luck is a variable. Brennan's luck was that the flak hit the navigation table instead of the fuel tanks. Reed's luck was that he was not leaning over the table when the fragment passed through. The crew's luck was that the hydraulic leak was slow enough to allow the landing gear to extend. Remove any one of these variables and the mission ends differently. But the variables aligned. The mission succeeded. The crew survived. The aircraft was repaired. The story was recorded in the operations record book and filed away. No one called it exceptional at the time. Completing a mission with damaged equipment was routine. The only unusual aspect was that the damage prevented the navigator from navigating. This was unusual enough to merit a note in the debriefing report. It was not unusual enough to merit further investigation. The war continued. Bomber Command flew raids every night the weather allowed. Aircraft were damaged. Crews compensated. Missions were completed or they were not. The statistics were compiled monthly and analyzed for trends. The trend in March of 1943 was that loss rates were acceptable and bombing accuracy was improving. Individual missions like Brennan's did not affect the trend. They were noise in the data. But the individual missions mattered to the crews that flew them. Brennan's crew flew together for 11 more missions after Saint-Nazaire. They developed procedures based on what they had learned. Reed kept a backup set of charts in a different part of the aircraft. Clark checked the radio bearings more frequently. Moss monitored the hydraulic systems more closely. These were small adjustments. They accumulated into a slightly higher probability of survival. Slightly higher is still higher. In a war where survival probabilities are low, any increase matters. Bomber Command's overall loss rate in 1943 was 4.5% per mission. A crew that flew 30 missions had a 44% chance of completing the tour. Brennan's crew completed 30 missions. They were in the minority. They were in the minority not because they were braver or more skilled than other crews. They were in the minority because their aircraft held together and their pilot adapted when the systems failed and their luck held for 30 missions. 30 missions is 6 months of operations. 6 months is long enough for most of the variables to turn against you at least once. Brennan's variables turned against him on March 23rd. He compensated. The aircraft landed. The mission continued. This is what aviation teaches. The systems are reliable until they are not. The training is adequate until it is not. The luck holds until it does not. The crew that survives is the crew that recognizes when the situation has changed and adapts without hesitation. Hesitation is fatal. Adaptation is procedural. Brennan did not hesitate. When Reed reported that he could not navigate, Brennan immediately assumed the navigation task. He did not debate the problem or discuss alternatives. He stated what would happen and the crew executed. This is leadership, though Brennan would not have called it that. He would have called it doing his job. The sky over the English Channel looks the same now as it did in 1943. The water is the same color. The distance from England to France is the same. The stars are in the same positions. What has changed is that no one is flying bombers through flak barrages at night, navigating by dead reckoning when the equipment fails. The war is over. The men who flew those missions are gone. What remains are the records and the lessons and the quiet understanding that survival was often a matter of competence plus luck, and that competence could compensate when luck failed, but only up to a point. Brennan reached that point on March 23, 1943. He flew past it and landed safely. The next mission, the variables might align differently, but that night they aligned in his favor, and he flew home.